But what if you could get on Netflix and go, create me a show that's like Suits? Now, we don't have that yet.
Wow, that's pretty good.
But that is what generative AI is, right? It is learning as it goes. It's following patterns to create something for you. And so just like we saw, that's going to be used everywhere. And we have to be cognizant as lawyers because we have a professional and ethical responsibility that could just absolutely collide with this idea of generative AI.
Welcome to the Law Talk Podcast, where we take you behind the curtains of a successful personal injury law firm. This season, the Hollis Wright team of attorneys will discuss a lot of topics sure to be pertinent to you and your family. You'll hear about current events as well as Alabama legislation impacting the legal industry and you. You'll hear about steps involved in a personal injury case and even hear an exciting case study involving a client, his injuries, and his ultimate success. You'll hear how the work performed by the attorneys at Hollis Wright and in the legal field helps to keep corporate America in check. Before we dive in, a little background. Hollis Wright & Clay is a law firm located in Birmingham, Alabama, with 10 seasoned trial lawyers on staff, a firm built on experience, excellence, and decades of incredible results. All right, so I admit, AI is a little intimidating. Joined by Michael Eldridge from Hollis Wright. So Michael, you're kind of an expert here on this. Are you intimidated? Were you intimidated by AI?
Well, first, let's be clear. I don't think I'm an expert. If someone said,
You're a resident expert.
Well, I'm an expert in how it's affected my life, and then I kind of became obsessed with it. This started about a year ago, and obviously we keep hearing about AI.
Yeah.
As if this is this new concept. And I remember the first time that I really heard about it, it was from some of the, clips from some of the smartest people in the world. They're like, be very careful. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, very nervous about how this could affect us and not really understanding why, but it's like if they're saying it and they're in the tech industry, then there must be something to it. And then something happened about a year ago that I'll talk about in terms of my experience with AI, and that's my experience in terms of being, practicing law. Mm-hmm. But in terms of figuring out how I could use AI, I started to kind of understand the dangers of it, being selfish as it affected me as a lawyer, right. But then seeing a broader picture, and then I just started studying exactly what it was. And the first thing is, in terms of being intimidated by it, is it's been around for your entire life.
Really?
Artificial intelligence has been around for your entire life.
Okay, that's wild.
The reason it's new is because there's this new subset or subgenre of AI that is affecting the world. It's affecting education. It's affecting business algorithms. And when we think about AI, we have to separate those two subsections. So the first is, you say it's been around my entire life. What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Well, what in the tech industry, I've learned they call narrow AI.
All right.
Has at least been around since the 60s. So you remember, you may remember this, IBM created like this computer that would play chess against, the Russian.
Gary Kasparov, all that.
Yeah, back in the 60s, and, would beat the best chess players in the world, and then you had Watson. Yeah. That's artificial intelligence.
Okay.
And it's what they call traditional or narrow artificial intelligence.
Okay.
And what defines that and why that's different, we see it everywhere. We just don't even know that we're using it. But it is an algorithm that has a predefined set of rules.
Okay.
Right? So that chess player, when it was Watson, or I think what they called it Deep Blue in the 60s, It cannot think on its own. Right? It cannot read patterns in terms and create new ideas and new strategies. It is beholden to whoever created it in terms of, it's very much an if this, then that.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So think about it this way. In terms of the ways that we use it. You've had email probably since the 90s, at least the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay. I send you an email from my Hollis Wright account to your email account. Where does it go? It goes to your inbox, right?
Right.
Now there's another folder in there though, right? That's not every email makes it to your inbox.
Yeah.
Some go to the spam folder.
Spam, yeah.
That's artificial intelligence, right? So a human being went in and they created an algorithm that says, look for this, and if you see it, then you need to redirect that to a different folder. Now, here's the difference, is that we have seen, how many times have someone said to you, David, check your spam folder?
A lot.
Right?
Especially if you're waiting on an email.
That's right. So that AI, that traditional AI or narrow AI, it makes mistakes. But when it makes mistakes, it can't adjust. It's going to keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. That's why these systems like Microsoft and Apple, how many times you have to update your phone, they are figuring out where the mistakes are, and the human being is going back in there and going, we're making a mistake here, recode it to stop making mistakes. So that's standard AI. All right? Well, with the subset that we're dealing with now that everybody is talking about, and I'm sure we've heard about ChatGPT, DALL-E, things like that, is what's called generative AI.
All right.
It is not restricted by what's put in the algorithm. In fact, the way that it was created is to learn and adjust as it goes.
Okay.
And what it can do that your spam folder can't do, right? Your spam folder can't create an email. It can follow a rule to send the email somewhere else, but it can't create new content, all right? What generative AI can do is create new content, create something that never existed before. All right, I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
So while I was sitting over here, you were eating your Chick-fil-A?
Right, yeah.
All right. I got on ChatGPT.
Okay.
And I typed in,
oh my,
create me an opening paragraph for an opening statement with a theme for a plaintiff's attorney where the client was killed by a truck driver driving under the influence of alcohol. Okay? ChatGPT said, certainly. How about this? In quotes, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, today we stand together to seek justice for a preventable tragedy. Our beloved client, insert victim's name, lost their life due to the reckless, irresponsible actions of a truck driver who chose to drive under the influence of alcohol. This case is not just about a tragic accident. It's about holding accountable those who put innocent lives at risk through their negligent and unlawful behavior. We will show you how this senseless act of drinking and driving shattered a family and how it could have been avoided if only the defendant had made responsible choices. Together, we will ensure that justice is served and that such a tragedy never happens again.
So one of the questions, there are basically three questions you're going to answer for us today. One of them has to do with the ethical concerns surrounding the use of AI in the legal profession like that.
Correct. And by the way, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this.
Right.
Right. I just want to, I think it's to get into that, whether it's in the legal profession or education, we have to understand the difference between traditional or narrow AI and what this is. What I just read is not on the internet. And in fact, I said to ChatGPT, after I got that, I talked to them and said, can you put a theme at the beginning of that? Just one sentence, add a theme. And it said, the cost of a preventable tragedy caused by reckless choices, right? So it's interacting with me and it's creating on the fly. So then that leads, because I'm sure you're sitting there going like, that sounds good. Sounds like that makes you,
use it. Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't love that opening paragraph, but somebody might.
Yeah.
Right. And so that leads us down this road of having that understanding of, that AI is not a bad thing in and of itself, but generative AI creates new problems. And, so we see it all the time. We talked about your spam folder. I'm sure you have Netflix.
Yeah.
What do you watch on Netflix?
So right now, my wife and I have just got on to Suits, the show Suits. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with Suits.
A lot of folks like it, so we decided to finally dive in.
All right, have you noticed since you've been watching Suits and that you've been going back to Suits that when you get back on Netflix, that on the interface, it starts suggesting shows to you that are showing you things that are like Suits or similar to Suits that you may be interested in?
Yes.
Right, if you go on mine, it's going to be all this World War II stuff and World War II in color and things about Patton, because when my wife and kids go to bed, I watch that and then fall asleep on the couch and wake up, to gunfire going off in the South Pacific. And my interface is going to look different than yours because of that traditional AI. And we love that.
Personalized, yeah.
We love that. Personalize it to us. But what if you could get on Netflix and go, create me a show that's like Suits. Now, that we don't have that yet.
Wow, that's pretty good.
But that is what generative AI is, right? It is learning as it goes. It's following patterns to create something for you. And so just like we saw, that's going to be used everywhere. And we have to be cognizant as lawyers because we have a professional and ethical responsibility that could just absolutely collide with this idea of generative AI. So you asked the question, what are the ethical concerns that I see? And I'm not the end-all, be-all, but in thinking through this, I told you earlier, David, that something happened to me a year ago.
Okay.
That's when I got into all this.
All right.
Carter Clay and I were about a month out from trial, and this wasn't like a garden variety case that we would try. It was at multiple defendants. There was a parallel federal lawsuit that was going on with it. We had motions for summary judgment that we had to respond to. We had to get ready for trial. We had pretrial dockets, oral arguments, a lot going on. And that's pretty typical, especially in a case like this. Not to mention we're going to mediation during that time period too. So you have one eye on trial and one eye, towards settling it. So one of the things that I was tasked with when we delved all this up was responding to a pretty complex motion for summary judgment. Then there was basically 10 witnesses. And when you're responding to a motion for summary judgment, it's kind of, lawyers will know this, but people may be going, what is a motion for summary judgment? And I won't go too far into it, but it's where the facts of the case and what we're going to call the undisputed facts of the case are going to be compared to the law to determine whether or not you have a cause of action or whether or not you can survive. And so in this case, there was about this motion that I was responding to, there was about 6 depositions. Now, you know Carter.
Carter,
right?
yep.
You may or may not believe this, but Carter does not take quick depositions.
I would bet not.
So when he's deposing a witness, he is very thorough.
Yeah.
And what may take one lawyer 100 pages of a deposition transcript takes Carter 500. And that shows how good of a lawyer he is. Well, I'm sitting up here on a Saturday going through these 6 depositions. I start with number 1, which was this OSHA expert that he had deposed. I get through and I do what's called a deposition summary. I've been doing these my whole career. And I'm going through line item and I'm showing where, this is the fact, this is where it is, this is the witness, and I'm going to do this for every single deposition.
Right.
All right, so I start with 1 at about 8 o'clock on a Saturday. I get done and it's 1:30 in the afternoon. And I thought, there has to be a better way to do this. Yeah. Can we hire someone to do this? I'm never going to be able to get done with this. Right. It's so much information. So I got online and I started looking at a way to quickly, and I wasn't looking for AI. Yeah. I was just looking for if people had tips for a quicker way to summarize a depo, how we all do. We go on Google and I find this thing called Smart Depo AI. And I start reading about it. It's X amount of dollars a page. You upload it, the deposition transcript, and then it will, within minutes, spit you out a line-by-line summary based off of the issues in your case. It reads the depositions, figures out, and will divide them by issue. This OSHA violation, opinion, this, contradiction, this. You couldn't hire someone to do better. Yeah. And then it hit me. I'm not even sure that I confirmed that I can do this or that this information is being protected.
Right.
I don't even know what I just did. I just know that I spent X amount of dollars a page and I got what I needed and it was quick. So I called the owner of the company and I was like, I need you to come and Zoom with me and explain to me. And they did a very, very good job. Yeah. The owner of the company was very nice and we used that tool. And I think it's a useful tool. But it hit me that as younger lawyers are coming in, they're going to start using this more. Yeah. So the first ethical concern that popped in my brain was ARCP 1.1, the first rules of the rules of professional conduct, which has to do with the competency of a lawyer, right?
Right.
And that rule, if you read it, says, competent representation requires the legal knowledge, skill, thoroughness, and preparation reasonably necessary for representation. Fair enough, right?
Fair enough.
You can't do it if you're not competent to do it. All right. Well, if we, and again, that could be a very good tool to summarize your deposition. But if we as lawyers become so over-reliant on getting our answers from AI, then we stop learning.
Right.
Right? I mean, the traditional ways of doing this are that's how we learn. Yeah. It's called the practice of law.
Right.
And so if we have a whole generation of lawyers that are coming up and they're getting every single one of their research answers, then they're not going to learn. They're not going to grow. And then what's going to happen is courts are going to see, because these things, by the way, Smart Depot AI, guess what? Just like your spam folder, what do you think it did? It made some mistakes.
Yeah.
Some big mistakes. Yeah. I was able to catch it because I was familiar enough with the case, but what if I was just throwing it in there and saying, write me a motion in response to this motion, and it spits it out and I file it? We're going to have some problems. So that's the first problem is if we are over-reliant, then at some point we're not going to be actually practicing law anymore.
All right, we need to step aside. We'll come back more on AI with Michael Eldridge of Hollis Wright. We'll do that after this quick break.
For over 20 years, Hollis Wright has been turning setbacks into comebacks. Make no mistake, who you hire after an accident will define your comeback. Pick a trusted firm that knows how to win. Let Hollis Wright tell your comeback story. Honestly, we don't love all the legal advertising we see, but some firms are simply built different. If you want a firm you can be proud of, one that doesn't stop until we win, well, you found it. Let Hollis Wright tell your comeback story.
Hanging out with Michael Eldridge from Hollis Wright, talking about AI and specifically how it is impacting the legal profession, how it may be impacting the legal profession in the future. You were talking about how you utilized it and it kind of helped you make a complicated, difficult, arduous task quicker and easier to do. But could it not go both ways? I mean, could AI reach a point where it could be potentially a problem for a lawyer not to utilize it?
I think it's a very fair question. My experience, maybe it's, David, you hang out with lawyers a lot, way too much that I start to worry about you. But I think I'm always thinking about what I may be doing wrong in the moment. That I think the foresight, and I've thought about this in terms of, like, I try to go back in history and think about this because we have lawyers, and if you look, I think LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters say that like 50% of lawyers, or right at 50%, don't want to use this or don't think it's right to use generative AI.
Right.
And they may not even understand exactly what it is or the fact that it's going to be used. There's just no two ways about it. It's going to be used. So, I mean, think about in terms of like aviation. Like, I mean, it's almost impossible at this point, just in terms of like pilot error on commercial airlines. Like they're using AI, right? They're using like systems that are in place from aerospace engineering, like GPS systems and look, obviously you can tell I did not go to school to fly an airplane, but right. They are using systems in place that they had to learn about.
Right, yeah.
And that make it safer. Mm-hmm. If you got on a flight tomorrow with Delta and the pilot came over the aircraft and was like, we're not using any of the electronic systems that make this airline safer because I don't want to learn them. I'm just going to fly this thing manually. Mm-hmm. You'd probably be like, no. I'm not doing that. And it wouldn't be reasonable. They wouldn't let that person fly. Yeah. So I think for sure we could get to a point where these become so valuable that it's almost malpractice not to use them. We got to think about those things.
So as you look at the legal profession, what are the major potential issues you see in the use of AI in the legal profession?
Supervision. I really do. And I'm somewhere in between. I think millennials are in a unique spot where we know enough about the world before all of this technology. But we also were in high school and college where we had to learn a lot about technology, that I look at the generations above us. And this is not me calling anybody a baby boomer or coming after Gen X. I know that it'll be me one day with some technology. But when we look at the generation that's below me with the Gen Z kids, it's not going to be enough for the supervisors and the managing partners of firms to go, that's the way I do it. I don't use it. I'm going to do it the traditional way, the way that I've always known how to do it. If y'all want to do it that way, do it that way. Because if there are requirements under the rules of professional conduct related to supervision, and if young lawyers are coming in and overutilizing this or not making sure that they're not violating ethics rules, that they're not violating rules from the Alabama Bar or the ABA, that they are potentially risking privacy concerns, then nobody's going to be able to just take a blind eye and go like, well, that's the way they do it, and I don't know anything about it. I think everyone across the board is going to have to learn about generative AI, every generation, every age of lawyer, because it's coming into the market.
The medical community is every industry is being impacted by AI and trying to figure out how to use it and utilize it, the best practices. Medical community is as well. One of their major concerns has to do with privacy. I mean, HIPAA laws and how you can protect that. Is that also a concern with its use in the legal profession?
Yeah, and we have ethical obligations in terms of confidentiality and our representation. Yeah. And I'll say this, I think the legal community relies a lot on the medical community because they are so serious and the HIPAA federal laws are so strict that, with Dropbox and things like that we've been using for years, they have come out and said, these are HIPAA compliant. These are not HIPAA compliant. And so I do think that you're right, that the industries, the bar, the AMA, the ABA, banking, because they've got big concerns as well. They've got algorithm concerns in terms of, you got to think about, if these algorithms don't know that you can't discriminate against people in terms of giving a loan and they're relying on them, we could find a pattern that they didn't, the people, there may have been no intent from a human standpoint, but it's like you have to do your job. And so we just have to be cognizant that these systems are learning on the fly. Yeah. And if we're relying on them and not using our professional judgment, then you could have huge issues.
All right, I think we've scared folks enough. We're going to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about the fun stuff and the ways in which AI may actually be a help to the future of the legal profession and the effectiveness of attorneys like yourself. We'll do that on the other side of this break.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show in 2011, my goal was to do what our firm does best. Help people answer questions related to real-world legal issues they have in their lives in a way that's not intimidating to talk with a lawyer. If the issue is important to you, it's equally important to us, and we're ready to talk with you at no cost.
Yeah, oftentimes people are confronting various legal issues in their lives that really run the gamut of a lot of different legal practice areas such as bankruptcy, criminal law, civil law such as personal injury, divorces, domestic relations. And to be able to have a show once a week that covers those practice areas and answers people's questions in those areas, that's really the main objective of the show.
We use the resources of the many lawyers at our law firm to create a plan that has a lasting impact for each person that calls or texts. And we also give back to the community at the same time. We are here to serve you, the viewer, each week on The Attorneys.
David Lamb here. We're with Michael Eldridge from Hollis Wright talking about AI and specifically how it relates to the legal profession, especially moving forward. We're all trying to figure this out. We've talked. The entire podcast basically is about the concerns and the pitfalls. What about the opportunities and the ways that AI might actually help you, help cases, and ultimately help clients?
Yeah, I think generative AI, because AI already is helping us, right?
Okay.
Spell check is
right.
That narrow AI that we talked about.
Yes.
But generative AI is there already is some very, very useful things that everyone should be using it for. Okay. I'm talking about as simple as you can go into ChatGPT, which is free if you have Microsoft Outlook, and you can type in and just say, make this more concise, right? Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how well in terms of sentence structure, and I'm a geek on that because I was a journalism major in college, but it's amazing how well they can do that. That's something very simple, and nobody should be ashamed to go like, my writing can get better. Right. Some of the best lawyers I know could work on their, sentence structure and writing and grammar. But I think in terms of where we are going to have a duty once we iron all these things out to actually use this is going to be in terms of mass documents.
Okay.
So I just talked about having an issue on a Saturday, going through 5 depositions and doing depo summaries. Now, if I'm just using this as a guide, like think about these antitrust cases, they're turning over sometimes millions of documents for these lawyers to look through.
That's impossible.
We deal with it all the time.
Jeez.
And if I can prompt AI to say, I'm looking for this, and it can go through hundreds of thousands or millions of documents in the blink of an eye and at least get us started, then wasting the manpower to go through that is, I think, a potentially an ethical concern for your client. They're paying for something that could be much, much cheaper, right? And so, again, I think this all has to, number one, we've got to be cognizant of it, but we also have to realize that there are some benefits if we are understanding of what our role as the professional is.
Is legal research one of those? It's already being used with legal research?
So I have not used it. I know, so, we use Westlaw and we've used LexisNexis before. LexisNexis and Westlaw both now have an AI tool.
Okay.
Adobe has an AI tool now that, that you can prompt it to tell it what you need from it, and it will go do the work for you. And if it messes up, you can tell it how it messed up, and it learns and it reacts, just like you're having a conversation with an associate. And so I think that for the most part, I will do legal research the way I was taught.
Right.
But for sure, I think that, I promise you this, Thomson Reuters, who owns Westlaw, they would not have invested the money that they did to add that extension on and to charge firms like Hollis Wright X amount of dollars for it if they didn't think that it was useful. So I think for sure that legal research going down the road is going to be really important. And how all this works, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know that in one use of it, in one experience with it, it opened my eyes to a lot in terms of how it's changed the world.
Could be. How about predictive analysis and analytics?
That's going to be a hot topic. And I don't know necessarily, David, if it's a good thing. So, what you're asking about really is that you can go in and it starts grading things out like judges and venues and what other law firms have done, which, by the way, we do.
Yeah.
If you go sit upstairs with John Spade and I or Craig Shirley.
You have an idea how a judge may hear a point based on how he's heard similar points.
Right, but there are systems now that you can pay for that are these, and how good they are, I don't know. I know that there's been some criticism, but if they're getting better, they're going to continue to get better. And so you're going to plug in a bunch of information. You're going to plug your entire case in there. You're going to tell it where the case is, who the other law firm is, who the insurance company is, who the judge is, and it's going to give you data based off of how it's going to predict this is going to cost, how long it's going to take, what the outcome is going to be. And I would think that there's going to be some owners of law firms that are very, very interested in that tool if it helps their bottom line.
Just a few minutes remaining, kind of where we can land this plane here. So where do you see AI going in terms of the future of the practice of law?
I think, like anything, there's going to be a pendulum. I think we're going to see an over-reliance and a lack of supervision by the legal community that's going to cause both judges, state bar associations, and the ABA to step in and create rules about the use of AI, the oversight of generative AI, and we will see the pendulum come back. How long that takes and what that looks like, I'm not sure. But I think in the end, like anything else, we will adapt to it. I'm sure the first time you heard about email, you thought it was dumb.
Yeah. Change is hard.
There's a reason that people laughed at the car and said it would never replace the horse. So I think we're going to have those pitfalls. How bad they are in the legal profession, I don't know. But it's all too clear that they're there and that not enough people are talking about it.
What I think would be interesting is for us to mark this conversation and have it in 12 months and see how things have changed and where we are. Because I think the pace of change is pretty quick.
I agree.
Yeah. Michael, good to see you.
It's good to see you, David.
And if you want to find out more about Hollis Wright, check out their website, Hollis Wright, all over social media as well. We appreciate it. We'll join you next time. See you.